Hello everyone, it's Shari Moss and I am a guest today on the Ellen Hutson blog, and I am excited to show you how I made this fun reveal wheel card. So I'm going to be using images from the new smooth sailing set that was part of the summer release from Lawn Fawn. I just love these sailboats, and I also love these little critters that you can put inside. So I'm stamping out two of the little bears. There's also a bunny, but this is going to be like a Father's Day card, so I wanted to use two of the same critter. There's a really cute lighthouse in this set as well, and there's some clouds that I'm going to stamp out too. I'm stamping all these in Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, so I can do some really simple Copic coloring on all of them. So my lighthouse I'm coloring in red, and instead of just leaving it bright white, I'm going to go in with a very pale brown, give it a creamy look. I colored the top blue so it's reflecting the light of the sky because this is going to be a daytime scene. I'm coloring my little bears here just with some brown and some very simple shading on the bottom of their faces and on their arms. I just love that these guys are like hanging over the side of the boat. I think that's so cute. And then for my boat, I'm going to give the bottom of the boat some gray, cool gray here, light on the bottom and a darker stripe. I'm going to use that same brown for the mast, and then I'm going to go in with a teal color for the flag on top. And you'll see here in a little bit that that teal color kind of matches what we're going to do with the sails. We're not going to leave them white. And then what I like to do with clouds is sort of trace around with a very pale blue on the inside and then blend it out with my colorless blender. So it's a very pale color around the edges. So I have got, this is an older petite paper pack. This is the Chill collection, but you can use any pattern paper you want. It's a great way to use up scraps. I just thought that this one had a nice, more masculine color palette. So I've stamped my sailboat on the pattern paper I want to use, and now I'm just going to fussy cut with my scissors and trim out those sails. So this is a really fun way to use scraps. It's also a fun way to add some cool pattern to those images. I'm going to use the coordinating dies that come with this set to cut out all my other images. And then once I've got all those cut out, I'm going to use my liquid glue to add the sails to the sailboat. This one's really easy to do as far as paper piecing because it's just a triangle and it's straight cuts. So you could make a whole bunch of these with all kinds of pattern sails if you wanted. So I'll just line those up with a stamped image, and look how fun that little sailboat is. Now I'm going to add my little bears, and I'm using some thin foam squares. So these are not quite as thick as the regular ones. They're slightly thinner, but it pops them up just a little bit on that sailboat. And I'm just going to put one on each side of the mast in the middle. I thought I could get two of them on one side, but it seemed very top heavy, or I should say side heavy. So I just ended up putting them both towards the center. How cute are they? So I'm just going to put those pieces aside, and I'm going to work on the assembly of my reveal wheel. So I'm going to be using the semicircle insert. This insert was meant for like making a bunny juggle eggs or butterflies flying around, but I'm going to show you kind of a different way to use it with some sentiments today. So I've cut that out of some blue spiffy speckles, and then I've also cut the wheel out so that when it's tucked behind there, it all looks the same and you kind of, the opening disappears. I've also cut out the wheel out of some white cardstock and the little wheel that you need for the back, and I've cut another front panel out of the white cardstock as well. And this is just going to be for some reinforcing. You'll see here in a little bit. I also used the panel without the insert to cut out all these colored squares. So this way I have the nice stitching detail around my panel and all my pieces that I'm going to stack on top of it. I've got a new wavy border here, simple wavy border, and I was just making sure that its placement was right and my boat wasn't going to be too high to where it got into my opening. Now I've got some craft cardstock, and I'm using the new palm tree border dies. It comes with the palm trees as well as the sand dune below. So I'm cutting out the sand dune first. This one has a fun dotted detail edge. And you can see that it's going to layer right behind my waves that I made. Now I'm going to cut out the palm tree border out of a darker craft cardstock here. And what's really fun about this is that arch on the bottom is exactly the same as the other one that comes in the set. And so I can just slide this around, tuck it right up against that piece I've already cut, slide it around till I get my trees where I want them. I don't have to have it completely centered. So you can see that I'm putting those pairs of trees together on the edges of my rectangle. So basically this creates the tree trunks. And it's going to layer perfectly right behind that sand. And I'm just checking where my boat is to see am I going to see all those trees. I'm going to go ahead and glue that craft cardstock, the lighter craft, to the front of the darker, because there's no need to keep these pieces separate, and this way I don't have to keep stacking all my pieces together. I also thought it would be fun to kind of add some clouds on the horizon. So I've got puffy cloud border die, and I'm just going to figure out sort of where I want it just to peek up behind the hill but not get above the trees. So I'm just going to kind of hold that in place and pull my trees out carefully, and then I can hold that cloud die on with some tape and run it through my die cut machine. And since I've cut all of these from the same front panel of that reveal wheel, they're all going to line up perfectly and have the stitching detail on the sides when you can see it. Now the palm tree border die also comes with the die to cut the tops of all the trees. So you can see here I have cut them out of 2 colors of green, and I'm just going to alternate between the dark and the lighter green cardstock. There are different shapes to these palm trees. You can see I put the wrong one on, so you just kind of have to look, but the die that cuts out the whole line of trees themselves cuts out the backs too, so it's easy to line up. You just have to pay a little better attention than I was paying there. And then the ones that are on the side, I'm just going to leave the whole canopy of the tree. I want it to kind of hang off my blue panel. Now here's that white panel I cut. It's exactly like that piece of pattern paper, and I'm basically using this just to stiffen up that piece of pattern paper and reinforce it, because cardstock is nice and stiff and pattern paper is not as stiff. I'm going to do the same thing with the wheel, because this is the part that's going to turn, and I want it to hold up over time and not get kind of bent from someone turning it. Now I'm going to use the semicircle template, and this is going to help me stamp in the opening and line things up. I'm using the Spring Reveal Wheel sentiments, and I'm going to use the Dad You're the Best and Dad You're My Hero. Now usually this part that says Dad You're is straight and it goes above the opening, and then you change what the opening says. But since I'm using the semicircle here, I thought I'd show you kind of a different idea to put a sentiment that goes all the way in the semicircle. So I lined it up and I just curved the stamp on my block, the Dad You're part, and my hero is already curved. So then I can stamp Dad You're My Hero, and then I can just flip it around, take off the Your Hero, replace it with the Best, and stamp that. So you can see how you could put Dad You're above the semicircle and just fill the whole circle with a whole bunch of sentiments. Now I use my template to help me line up my window. You don't have to do this, but here's how I do it. So I've got a little brad here. I've got that little circle that the die cuts. Then I'm going to go through the back of the big circle. You can go ahead and open up that brad, because we're not going to be gluing anything on the front, and it'll be easy to take off that template once we have stuff lined up. You want to take a couple of foam squares and put it on the small circle, just the small circle. Make sure it's not on the big one. You can take off those pieces on the back so that the adhesive is exposed. You can line up the window using your template, or you can use the score lines that come out with the die cut. And then I've got a back panel. This one's cut out of some dark blue cardstock, and I'm using the dark blue just because it's going to blend in with my card base that I plan on using. So once you've got that stuck down, you can see it turns nicely. You can open that brad back up, and it's not going to go anywhere. And then you can just easily take off your template. And then you can close that brad back up, and your wheel is right where it needs to be. Now before I assemble the rest of the wheel, I want to go ahead and decorate the front of my card while it's still nice and flat, because once we put it over the wheel, it's going to be popped up on some foam squares. So I'm just going to go ahead and start layering all these pieces that I've already cut. I'm going to start with the clouds that are the back most piece that I want to put on. And then I can just line it up with the bottom of that square. Next, I'll put on those palm trees that I've already assembled. And the thickness of all these cardstocks actually gives it some dimension, which is kind of nice without having to use foam adhesive. Now I'm going to add my lighthouse, and I just wanted to kind of tuck it behind those trees there and behind that sand dune, so it's kind of in the background. Next, I will add the waves that I cut out of teal cardstock, and then I can add my boat, and I'm just going to tuck it behind those waves so it looks like it's floating. I also have the little clouds that I cut out from this set, and I'm just laying those around the sky. I've already figured out where I wanted them placed, and I'm using those thin foam squares again to adhere those down. So again, it gives it a little bit of dimension, but not too much. And finally, there's some little birds in this set as well. There's 2 different sizes, so I'm just stamping those around to fill in the sky. Alright, now it is time to finish assembling the reveal wheel. You can see I've got a lot of foam adhesive here. I like to make sure I have all 4 corners and then around the wheel. And you just want to make sure that none of that foam square is touching the wheel so that it can spin freely. And since this back piece is exactly the same as the front side piece, you can just line it up. I like to kind of stack it like you're stacking a bunch of papers on my desk surface, so I know that the bottom is definitely lined up. Now I can add this to my card base, which I like to use liquid glue for this because I can shift it around a little bit and get it nice and centered on my card base. And how cute is this? Now for the most important part, and it's the part I always forget until the very, very end. There's a little arrow die in this reveal wheel stamp set, or die set, excuse me, and that tells the recipient to spin the wheel to see what changes in the opening. So I've just cut that out of white because it's nice and bright and shows up on that dark blue background. And I just think those little bears are so cute. Isn't this a great Father's Day card? Or even just any day card for Dad. So I hope you enjoyed kind of a different look at how to use the semicircle opening with sentiments instead of images. Here is a look at that finished card with the 2 sentiments that it has, and I just love the plaid sails on this. It's just so cute. Thanks for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye.